Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Habitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security to defend the state of Israel. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing to allow us to bring you really behind the headlines what is happening here in Israel. There have been major changes in this war since our last briefing, namely the direct attack of Iran on Israel, which happened, of course, on Saturday night, early Sunday morning. And to address this issue, we have Brigadier General Amir Avivi, who will share his reactions. General Avivi was not able to be present right now during our live briefing, and therefore I sat down with the general just a few hours ago so that he could share with you his thoughts on what happened. So give me a second, please, and I will pull up the video recording that we did just a few hours ago. Thank you, General Avivi, for sitting down with me so we can discuss some really important things about Iran. So to start off with, were you surprised to see a direct attack from Iran to Israel on Saturday night, early Sunday morning?
Well, I think that the Iranians made it clear that they are going to retaliate and made a lot of preparations. We knew this is going to be a big attack, but also my assessment was, and I talked about it on national TV, that we're going to be able to deal with this. We have to take in account that Iran is far away. When they shoot, we have a lot of time to spot the shooting and react. Some of the capabilities like drones take like 8 hours to reach Israel. It's time for our Air Force to intercept them. Cruise missiles that take 2 hours. And the main challenge was the ballistic missiles. Ballistic missiles, they shoot, go through space and back. 10 minutes from Iran to Israel, and we intercepted all of them. This is an amazing achievement of Arrow 3 and Arrow 2, and even Iron Dome participated in this effort. I can tell you that for decades we have been discussing in the army what will happen when Iran will attack. Really, you never know what to expect, but now we know. We know we can cope with this, we can defend, and it means we have much more freedom of operation to attack and deal with their nuclear program and other capabilities they have.
Did we learn anything about Iranian capabilities or Israeli capabilities that we didn't know prior to this attack in defense?
Well, 50% of their missiles failed. Either they fell in Iran itself or they fell while flying towards Israel. So out of all of these missiles, we only dealt with half of them because many of them failed. This shows you that these Iranian industries are quite problematic. They're not producing really high quality missiles. I think that we saw the ability of Israel very, very accurately to coordinate the defense with the US, with Britain, with Jordan, Saudi Arabia. We have seen a coalition working together in defense, and we need to see the coalition working together also in offense, attacking Iran and its nuclear sites and other capabilities they have.
Now, when it came to the Hamas attack on October 7th, it was the element of surprise that really caught Israel off guard. Whereas here with Iran, there was anything but surprise. There were hours and hours and hours of prep time from the point where they launched their drones. Was that deliberate on Iran's part, or just the factor of them being so far away? Why not first, for example, send off the ballistic missiles and only give Israel 10 or so minutes to react?
Well, the readiness of Israel was before they shot. We were monitoring everything they do together with the US. We knew all the time what was going on. What are the plans? What are they going to do? When are they going to do it? Israel has very good intelligence when it comes to Iran, and the level of readiness was high already days before, so they couldn't have surprised us in any way in this sense. We were ready, and I'm glad that we managed to intercept 99% of these capabilities. And even then, the Army says, we did some mistakes, we could have done better. So definitely, we can do even better than that.
Do you think Iran wants to escalate, and this is just the first of many attacks, or they see this as a one-off event, and their role they see as over?
I think Iran made a huge mistake, huge strategic mistake. For 6 months, although they're managing everything, funding, directing, all these attacks, they managed to stay behind the scenes and to create a reality where the pressure was moved from them and their proxies to Israel. And now they shifted the world attention to them. For the first time, the world understands what is Iran, what are their capabilities. When Europe sees ballistic missiles shot thousands of kilometers, they know they're next. Understand when we say these ballistic missiles will be nuclear, just a matter of time, now they understand. So basically, Iran created a reality where Israel gained back support, Israel gained back freedom of operation, Israel gained the opportunity to push forward the coalition with the US and the region. Now the region understands better the need to work together and push a normalization with Saudi Arabia and all the Sunni world against this huge threat. Iran has lost its deterrence because we showed we can deal with this threat. And now Israel is much more emboldened and really with determination deal with the Iranian nuclear program. Basically, the Iranians set the clock for their own destruction. And in this sense, they made a lot of mistakes. Strategically, also, we're not happy about the US saying that they don't want to attack Iran, they don't want to be involved in an attack, but the US is saying we'll deal with this diplomatically. There are also opportunities in that, restoring sanctions, snapbacking from the JCPOA, hurting dramatically Iranian economy. So definitely there are many real opportunities here. But again, looking at what Israel will do, we need to look at the whole picture. Our first priority is Rafah. We need to destroy Hamas. We need to bring back the hostages. This is priority number one. Priority number two is Hezbollah, pushing them out of South Lebanon and bringing back our citizens home. Priority number three, destroying Iran's nuclear sites and really setting back Iran and their economy and isolating them by building a coalition and the international pressure on Iran.
So the U.S. is calling for restraint with regards to the way Israel reacts to Iran. Am I hearing the same thing from you right now? Because you're saying the first priority is Rafah, the second is Hezbollah, and then down the line is Iran, or I'm misunderstanding that entirely?
No, I'm saying that we need to see the full picture. Of course, we have to react, but it makes it much more difficult when the U.S. is reluctant to do it as a coalition. So we need to get the best of what the U.S. is willing to do at this moment. And this is really restoring sanctions, snapbacking, backing us up in Rafah, backing us up in our operations in the north with Hezbollah. While doing so, Israel needs to decide what kind of response it's going to do in Iran. But if we respond, this needs to be a very, very decisive and strong response. This attack should matter, should make a difference. It's not just shooting some base or just for the sake of responding. It's not about honor, like the Iranians are acting now, irrationally. No, we need to calculate what we do, and if we do it decisively and at the timing that suits us. Now, I think that what worries me about the U.S. response and unwillingness to show power is that China is looking at this, Russia is looking at this, and the message globally is that this unwillingness to use military force might destabilize the whole globe, might embolden the Chinese in their aspiration to take over Taiwan, might embolden further Russia in their fight in Europe. It will embolden Iran, the Middle East, and beyond. And this is a very problematic message the West is sending. It's the wrong message. There is no appeasement with a country like Iran. Iran needs to be dealt militarily. And I can say that when I visited Washington last time, I visited the Heritage Foundation, and they are really leading the policies the next administration will have, if it will be a Republican. And they're saying clearly, Iran must be dealt militarily. We need to destroy their capabilities or get them to understand that military attack is imminent if they don't dismantle all their capabilities. So either way, we need to deal with Iran. There are many ways to do so. One of the things we learned from this attack, Iran is very, very worried about their economy. They kept saying we're not attacking economical sites, we are attacking military bases, basically sending a message, don't attack our oil refineries or oil fields. And this is exactly what we need to attack. We need to destroy their economy. And this will be done if sanctions are not going to be restored, if there is not going to be a snapback. We'll have to deal with their economical capabilities in a different way.
So now that Iran has showed their true colors, it's no longer just a shadow war between Israel and Iran, but at the same time, the U.S. is hesitant to take any further action. So has anything really changed at this point vis-a-vis the U.S. perception of Iran?
Well, I think that, the U.S. is a big, big country, and unlike Israel that can change very fast and is very agile, the U.S. policies take time to change. But I think that what happened here will think at the end of the day, there will be an understanding that Iran is a huge threat to humanity. And there will be eventually a change of policy also in the U.S. And I'm optimistic. I think that eventually there will be a coalition and we will deal with Iran.
Now, speaking of that coalition, can you just describe a little more detail about the participation with Jordan in what happened on Saturday night and other regional players and what that could develop into?
So Iran cannot attack Israel without going through Jordan. So basically, Jordan defended its airspace and dealt with the threats that crossed to its border. We have to understand that the capabilities of Jordan to deal are Israeli capabilities and American capabilities. They are completely dependent on our own capabilities. They are enjoying Israeli air defense. So they joined with us to deal with these threats, in coordination also with other countries. And for many years, we have prepared this ability to coordinate a defense against missiles and drones and cruise missiles, and it worked very, very well.
And why do you think the Houthis and Hezbollah did not take the opportunity to join in on the attack on Saturday night?
I think that Iran wasn't looking for a full-scale attack because that would mean full-scale war, and are not seeking a full-scale war now. They said it clearly: we attacked, we retaliated, that's it, it's over. We all need to look at it as something that is done, over. But it's not going to happen. It's not over. It's not over. We understand that we need to deal with them. They have launched a war against us, not only by shooting directly, but also by launching Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. And the way to deal with this is not just dealing with the proxies, it's really cutting the head of the snake. And they are the head of the snake, and their head needs to be cut.
Thank you, General, for answering all of these questions. One final question before we go. What do you think Israelis and the Zionists abroad should be focusing now in terms of their advocacy? Should they be talking about Iran? Should they be focused more on the war with Hamas? What's the emphasis right now, and what should we be pushing for?
The answer is everything is Iran. Iran has built Hamas, built Hezbollah, it built the Houthis in Yemen, the militias in Iraq. Iran is a threat to U.S. national security, is a threat to freedom of shipping around the world. It's trying to undermine the U.S. by building capabilities in South America. It's trying to take control of Hormuz, Bab el-Mandab, and Gibraltar Straits. It's trying to push its radical ideology that believes that the world needs to be destroyed completely and they need to rule the day after. This is the ideology. The reason why they're focused on Israel is because this is what's standing between them and global domination. So we need to understand everything that's happening is really generated by Iran, this huge threat. And in order to deal with this, we need to join together and deal with this. And it needs to be together in a coalition. This is about a threat to the whole Western society, not just Israel. And therefore, the whole society needs to fight together to really destroy this huge threat.
So much for joining me and for answering all of these questions. That was Brigadier General Amir Avivi in discussion earlier today with his reactions about Iran. And now I'm very pleased to be joined by Mark Zell, the chairman of the Republicans Overseas. I had the opportunity to hear Mark earlier today on TV, and I said, wow, I have to speak. So Mark, thank you so much for joining.
Glad to be here, Moshe.
So Mark, let me ask you a similar question I asked the general. Now that Iran's intentions are clear to the world, it's no longer just a shadow war. Do you think anything will change with regards to the way the U.S. Is dealing with this war here in Israel?
No. And the reason I say that, I mean, I heard the general's remarks, and I agree with virtually everything he said. But I think he's a bit over-optimistic about the American and Western reaction. I mean, that reaction you have seen was immediately, and perhaps some people think even before the Iranian attack, was to keep this Iranian attack under control, that they wouldn't spark a regional war with this attack, and therefore it had to be moderated. Restraint is the word we used, that we heard them use. My information, based on the New York Times report, is that Israeli jets were already on their way to Iran after the Iranian attack on early Sunday morning, our time, April 14th. And after, as a result of the phone call between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu, those jets were called back. I don't know if that's true or not true, but it does show you the impact of the American position on here. On Israeli response. It's the same position they've taken with respect to Gaza, with respect to the ground war on after October 7th, and then with respect to the invasion of Rafah, which is still being delayed, and of course the introduction of super quantities of humanitarian aid into Gaza. And the same thing happened here with the Iranians. We were told that okay, the United States will come to your defense. And indeed, America helped shoot down some drones and some ballistic missiles. The Israeli Defense Forces did a remarkable job in that regard. But nevertheless, the word from Washington was, and from London, and from Paris, and from Brussels, don't retaliate. restrain yourselves. And that, Moshe, I think that's a recipe for disaster. On the TV show that you mentioned, I contrasted the two concepts. One is conception, this old or preconception that the West has. You can deal with your enemies like you can with your friends, and you can sit and negotiate with them and reason with them, versus perception, which is how the folks here in the Middle East, Arabs and many Iranians and other groups in the Middle East, look at this. You know, we all know in the West what happened on April 14th. Israel scored a remarkable achievement by blocking virtually all of these missiles coming in. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them. And that was considered to be a huge accomplishment. And it is in the eyes of the West. But this morning, if you start looking at the headlines around the Arab world, they say things like, Israel has no immunity. Israel's vulnerable. Israel can be beaten. They're having celebrations in Iran and there are parliaments around the Middle East. This tells you something that is completely at odds with how we in the West look at things. And that perception here in the Middle East is a recipe for disaster.
Now, when you say recipe for disaster, does that include the U.S.? Does the U.S. become open to attack because of this misconception that they have?
Well, the Iranians have already said that, okay? And I think if anything, I think Prime Minister Netanyahu has learned this, and others have learned this. When your enemy says they're going to destroy you or they're going to hit you, you should take them seriously. We learned that in World War II, and we learned that in other times. Okay, but the Iranians said, yeah, we're going to go after the Americans, and we're going to go after the Jordanians for their betrayal of us, and we're going to go after anybody that supported Israel in its defense against Iran, including the United States. I think that because of the crisis on the U.S. southern border, the Iranians probably have numerous sleeper cells in the United States. If they wanted to cause trouble, they could do it. They have no compunction about attacking American military targets in Iraq and Syria and the Red Sea through the Houthis and through their proxies in Iraq and Syria and directly. So the answer to that is, yeah, the Americans are on the firing line.
Now, I very much connected with your idea of Kissinger 2.0. Are you able to share that with our viewers?
Yeah, well, one of the things that happened in the Yom Kippur War in 1973 is Kissinger here, this American Jew in the Nixon administration, decided that it was important from America's strategic interests to let the parties bleed, and that included the Jews in Israel, okay? And so he delayed approving American aid to the Israeli armed forces after the Egyptian-Syrian attack, and let us bleed for a couple of weeks until he felt that we had suffered enough, gave us the aid, brought us about the counterattack. He then forced us into a stalemate and got the war over. It was all very cunning. It was all very in my view, very dastardly, a kind of realpolitik taken to an extreme. And he got what he wanted. But that's Kissinger 1.0. On April 14th, we had Kissinger 2.0, when we had the President Biden telling Netanyahu, get those planes back, no more conflict again, leave the Iranians alone, everything will be okay. You've bled, they've been humiliated. Let's put an end to it. That is conception, that preconception idea coming to the fore, where we are projecting our own values and our own style of dealing with crisis onto the enemy in this region. That's a terrible, terrible mistake.
Mark, I want to zoom out for a second, and I very much appreciate you joining me and sharing your expertise. To what extent do you think that the U.S. has kind of put handcuffs on the Prime Minister, on the IDF, in terms of all of their operations since October 7th?
Well, you can see that. I can answer that very quickly. Immediately after October 7th, Israel was planning to commence a ground war into Gaza, okay, which is what they should have done. Because of American resistance, we waited close to a month, 3 weeks, something like that, to do that. And that sent a message also to the enemy. The same thing it happened here on April 14th. The whole world was ready, as Brigadier General Avivi said, for the Iranian attack. The Americans may have had known a lot more about it than they're telling us now, but in any case, we were ready. And we knew, and the Americans knew, that if we were hit by the Iranians, that we would, our initial and I think quite logical response, particularly given the realities of the Middle East, would be to attack back, to retaliate. We started to do that. Biden said, no way. When we said we were going to cut down the humanitarian aid in Gaza and because Hamas was stealing it all, they said, no way, you stop that. When we suggested that we have rights in Judea and Samaria, and the settlements, or so-called settlements, were completely appropriate, as the previous administration had determined, the Biden administration said no way, and went to the United Nations and even abstained on a very dangerous Security Council resolution to that effect, and breaking all precedent, imposed this Executive Order 14115 on February 1st, attacking our very existence of the Jewish people in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, and called upon Israel to take action against them. And they said immediately after, this is Blinken coming right out in the middle of the war, saying that immediately after the war is finished in Gaza, that may come speedily in our days, said that we have to agree to the establishment of a Palestinian state run by the likes of these characters in Ramallah. So if you ask me what the Biden administration has done, there you go, in a nutshell.
Mark, thank you for sharing all of that. Thank you for joining me for this briefing. I hope we can invite you back to discuss in more detail about that bill with regards to the settler violence, so to speak, in Judea and Samaria, but we are completely out of time to discuss that now. Thank you to all of our viewers.
Thank you, Moshe, for having me on, and may I wish all of your viewers a happy Passover, those of you who celebrate it, and the rest a happy week and only good tidings for us all.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning in. We'll be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Israel time. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.